We're going to hear from Ben Gris now, with a personal family touch to. Certainly can't capture everything that his parents mean to him, but I think he'll convey to you something of that kind. Thanks very much.
So first of all, I wanted to thank the rabbi and the community not only for deservedly honoring my parents, but actually bringing the five of us Gris kids together, because it is a very rare opportunity that we do get together, and it's only because of this event that we come together as a family today. You know, following up on that video, it's really hard to top what people had to say, and you know, actually I look at the honoree book, and there's a message that says, Bill and Paula are good people. I could probably just stop right there. But it is an honor for me to be here today on behalf of my siblings to speak, and really I just want to speak to my parents tonight. Y'all are all here, and I'm glad you can hear, but it's really to them. Every morning during davening, there is a particular verse in Birchot HaShachar that comes from Tractate Shabbat, and it has always been very, very meaningful to me. And it's a place where I always pause and take thought. And that verse says, Elu devarim sha'adam ochel peroteim ba'olam hazeh, ha'keren kayemet l'olam haba v'Elohim kibud aveim u'gemilut chasidim v'ashkamat beit hamidrash shacharit v'arvit v'achnasat orchim u'vikur cholim v'achnasat kala u'levayat emet v'hidun tefillah v'avat shalom v'redam ha'chaverot v'talmud Torah k'neged kulam. I think this verse from Talmud Tractate Shabbat is reflective of everything that has been described here tonight, and is reflective of the experience that I have growing up in our home. And there's little doubt in my mind why it is that I always pause as I say this verse. You know, your deeds, the daily deeds of your life, were imprinted on me, and on my siblings as well. And each of the attributes that are described in the Talmud there, I think, are attributes that the two of you excelled in, and that it was your deeds more than your words that really left a mark. Whether it was Kibud Aveim, and having grandma in our house for so many years, through good times and bad, but always recognizing the importance of honoring parents. And Gemilut Chasidim has been described throughout the video, and as my siblings talked about on the video, always hosting people and bringing people in, and reaching out to those who perhaps were lonely. Shacharit v'Arvit and Levayat Emet, and being involved in the Chevra Kadisha, and being involved in the shul and the community, and in building the schools, and in bringing all of that to our table, such that it was the discussion point at most times. It just had a tremendous impact on myself and on my siblings. And standing here tonight, I think we get a glimpse of the Karen that is described in the Talmud, the reward. You know, seeing a community and a shul that has been built over 50 years of their presence, and looking at how much of a role that y'all played in that, and into building this wonderful shul, and making Atlanta the vibrant Jewish community that is, and more personally, just looking at the 5 children that you have and the 9 grandchildren, were filled with a love of Zion, of Zion, and of the centrality of Masim Tovim that you taught us, and the importance of family. And I know, speaking for myself and for Erin, who wishes she could be here, that, it's this legacy and these verses that y'all excelled in that are the benchmark that we try and set for ourselves. And we strive for that every day and hope that we can at least get a glimpse of what y'all were able to do and what you continue to do in this community and in your lives. And so I just wanted to thank you on behalf of Joy and Sam and Rebecca and Avi for showing us such a marvelous model for how to lead our lives as B'nai Torah and lead lives of Torah. So we thank you and we love you.
The film was fabulous, but I suppose nothing speaks louder and more clearly than the tribute from a child. And I would encourage all of you who don't know the Gris children well to come and say hello to them and speak to them while they're in town. Because the effort to come here was monumental, leaving families behind in Israel and from all over the place. But Ben speaks for all of them when he gives you those words. Rabbi Feldman now is going to make a presentation to the Grises, and they're right away afterwards going to speak to you. So I now ask Rabbi Feldman to come up and make the presentation.
Standing here after the words that we've heard on the video and in person, Benji, I feel kind of like I felt last week. I was just fresh back from a trip to Israel, and was on a mission of rabbis from around the country who were invited by the foreign ministry to come in a pilot program to become advocates in a more effective way for Israel. And we all know, particularly after the events of the last few days, how absolutely necessary that is. And at one point, they took us on a bus to the well-known promenade where you can look out on the entirety of Yerushalayim, the Ir HaAtikah, and the old city, the new city. And during that time, the guide starts describing to us. He says, over there is the Temple Mount. And 2,000 years ago stood the Holy Temple of Jerusalem. So one of the rabbis couldn't take it. We went over to the guide and he said, we're rabbis. We're not ministers. We represent Judaism. That particular part of the trip did not help us become advocates for Israel. But maybe that guy learned something, I think, about Jerusalem that day. So here, I'm vested with the responsibility of presenting to our dear Bill and Paula, about whom we've heard so much. And I need to say something that you don't know. I think I do. And there really isn't anything that can be said that you don't know, because they are an open book. They've been with us for 50 years. I really have a problem. I'll tell you what the problem is. It's like a kasha. We know that change is a constant. The only thing in the world that you can count on is change. And corporations know if you don't change and reinvent yourself from time to time, you're going to be in the dustbin of corporate history. Everybody knows that you've got to adapt to the times, and you've got to get with the zeitgeist. So the question I have is that this synagogue has really changed over 50 years. There's nothing that you could say about the synagogue 50 years ago that really applies today, really, if you think about it. I mean, I understand why the Grises would have been appreciated back in the 50s when they first came to Atlanta, and they were Orthodox and young, those two words didn't go together at that time. You were Orthodox, you spoke Yiddish, and you were, let's say, older than 45 or 50. Let's put it that way. So I understand in that period of time that you'd be appreciated because you were really unusual to be a young couple that was observant and at the same time so open. But now, 2011, they're not unusual. I mean, now in the synagogue there are people who are in the dozens who are more pious than the rabbi. If you don't believe it, you can even ask them. So, it's another world. And if you go back through time, you look at the decades of the synagogue and the various phases of our existence, there are so many different times, different ways that the verses could be appreciated. The problem I have is they haven't changed. So how does it work? How does a couple that's been so appreciated so consistently over so many different periods of time, how do they end up not changing and at the same time gaining value through all these phases of the existence of the synagogue? So, at first I was trying to look at the various characteristics that we know about with Bill and Paula. We know about their openness to people. We've heard about that. We know about their welcoming. We know about their pride. We know about their attachment to Israel. I don't know if you know this. I'm sure you do. But if there's ever a challenge to the well-being of the Jewish people, of the Jewish state, Bill is one of the first people that comes over after meeting to me and says, are we going to say Tehillim? Are we going to pray for them? Are we going to offer words of supplication on behalf of the people there? If there's a terrorist attack, God forbid, Bill is right there worried about it personally. When something happens that gives us reason to be proud of the people of Israel or the state of Israel, Bill is the first one to either fax a copy of an article and bring it in, or nowadays send an email circulated to make sure that it's brought to our attention. If there's a class that is going to address any new topic, you know that Bill and Paula are going to be there. You announce some speakers coming in from out of town to address the congregation, you know that somewhere in the first or second row, Bill and Paula are going to be there. If there's a class that's consistently there, week in and week out, you know that during the question and answer, Paula's going to be there with a thoughtful question, slowly articulated, always with a smile, always with the excitement of discovering something new, even if she's been over the material again and again. So I think about all the characteristics that we know them for, and I still don't know exactly how they manage to be not only the survivors, but really leaders in a synagogue that is constantly reinventing itself. Until I realize that there is a word, I think we'd all agree with this word, it hasn't been mentioned yet, and that's a word that the Almighty Himself uses when He praises His most valued servant. You know, when Aaron and Moshe and Aaron and Miriam end up inadvertently defaming their brother Moshe, God stands up for them. And God praises Moshe in terms that last until today, so that the whole world knows the uniqueness of Moshe. And what is the word that God uses to describe Moshe? He doesn't use the word holy, doesn't use the word pious, doesn't use the word prophetic, doesn't even say leader. The word that God uses is Kol Beisi Ne'aman Hu. In my entire household, he is the most loyal. He's the most faithful. He's the one I can count on to fulfill my will and to represent me absolutely and totally. Ne'aman, loyal. Loyalty is a trait that you and I all know is so rare nowadays.